Join me now for an impromptu, spur-of-the-moment interview with the Silver Guru, David Morgan. His website is silver-investor.com or themorganreport.com. David, welcome back to the program.
Oh, it's great to be with you.
I'm sure I'm not alone when I say this. I feel as if I have zero say in how our tax dollars are being overspent to pay for who knows what, and it's consistent and more aggressive even during these trying economic times. And I'm talking about the overspending. Where's the representation in the taxation? I received an email today from you asking us to sign a petition.
Well, it's not my petition. What happened was, being rather prominent, I guess you could say, on the internet in the precious metal space, obviously silver particularly, I get approached by different people, entities, causes fairly regularly. And this one gentleman got a hold of me that he had started a petition, and this was involving some legislation that he wanted changed. Now, Ellis, I hope you're strapped down in your seat belt on sitting down, because this is so ridiculous. I'm almost embarrassed to say it. But his legislation, his proposed bill that he wanted to get enough petitions signed where he could actually put it on the ballot in North Dakota, was that the legislator had to read the bill before they voted on the bill. Now, just saying that just sends a chill down my spine, because when we elect officials to represent us, which is the way it's supposed to be, or at least that's what we're told or we're taught, these people you would take for granted would read the bills before they vote on them. But that's not the case at all. In most cases, they don't read them at all. And so that was the crux of this. I read what he had done, and I watched the DVD. He sent it to me, priority mail. I dropped what I was doing. It was 2 days ago. Watched the whole thing. Really got me more fired up watching the DVD than what I had already maintained over the phone conversation. And I decided to help him out and learned a great deal in the process. Now, he spent a great deal of his own time, money, and energy throughout North Dakota, and he needed 15,000 signatures in order to move this petition to have it put on the ballot in North Dakota. He only received 2,000 signatures. So he was like 7 times as many to go in order to actually even get this thing placed on the ballot. But he learned a great deal. And in that process, he's contacting people such as myself that are willing to help the cause. But again, I just have to say it one more time. Where have we gone where we have to put a measure into the legislature that demands they read the laws that they're voting on? I mean, this is like a science fiction or a comic book situation. Oh, no, we don't read them. We just vote on them. I mean, it's ridiculous, and yet that is exactly the case.
Now, I read something recently that illustrated the concept that these bills are purposely written in great misguided depth, voluminously thick, in order that they're impossible to read. They're not supposed to be read. They're just supposed to get passed. They're never going to be read. Most members of Congress don't read them. Bills are just getting passed by rote. Where's our voice, David?
Well, that's one of the many points. Exactly right. This documentary does a great job of explaining most of these bills are written by lobbyists that have very much vested interest, special interests as they're commonly referred to. They write the legislation and they pass it along to their hand-picked Congress critter of choice, and they put the bill into the House of Representatives, and then it's voted on. What they also showed in this documentary, which I actually didn't know, although it didn't shock me when I saw it, was when these votes are taking place, they vote electronically by pressing a button on their desk, and that legislators will push the buttons of other House members that either are absent or not at their desk at the precise time. For an example, I forget whom it was, but it's again in the DVD. One of the Congress critters pressed his button, turned around, and the guy behind him didn't have a chance to press the button before he voted for him. I mean, this is absolutely, again, absurd. It's beyond ridiculous. And yet, these are people that are spending money we don't have for causes we don't want, and doing it without even knowledge of what laws they're passing. I mean, again, words don't, leave me. I don't have anything, I can't express it strongly enough of how upsetting this really is when you think about what has gone on and what has happened to a nation that was set on a fundamental principle that was basically very simple, and the fact that we're all created equal didn't mean that we're all created equal in the sense that we could all play NFL football although all created equal in the fact that we're all could be an Einstein, but we're all created equal in the eyes of the law. That's what separates a republic from a democracy, is we're all equal in the eyes of the law. We all have the same legal rights guaranteed by the legislator, guaranteed primarily by our Creator, and secured by the founding documents. And it's gotten so convoluted, it's become laughable, although it's not in the least bit funny.
Where's the fairness here?
There isn't any. The fairness is gone. The sanctity of law is gone. The special interests are running the show. There's so much legislation out there and so much more that gets passed every year that no one can really make sense of it. Things have gotten so out of control and so far beyond a reasonable state that I think, unfortunately, it's going to take something nearly catastrophic to bring it back into some semblance of sanity, and I think that's going to happen. As you know my views, we don't talk politics very often. I really don't like to discuss it much, but point being that the economic situation is untenable, and that alone is something that resonates with everybody. Everybody buys food, everybody drinks water, everybody seeks shelter, and when those things start moving away from you or your ability to pay for them, everyone gets a wake-up call. And that's the direction that we're headed, and I think we're going to continue. And then these questions will be asked. I'm not sure the right questions will be asked. I'm not sure the right people will be blamed, but at least there'll be some waking up period that will take place. And when things fall apart, they don't come back together very easily.
Well, you know what the answer is, don't you? Spread the wealth. Come on now.
Yeah, right. No, they print it all up and drop it from helicopters equally to everyone, and then we'll all be rich and it won't matter.
If it's indeed all about money, where's the money going to come from to pay for all of this?
That's, as you know, Ellis, what deficit spending is all about. The deficit means that all the tax revenues that are collected do not cover the expenditures of the government. And to make up the difference, they have to borrow it. And that's been going on for, again, a very long time. And it will continue. I mean, right now they could tax everybody at 100%, and I don't think it would make a difference. We're mathematically at a point where it's impossible to get this thing under control. And so therefore, logic tells us it's out of control. It's not going to end well.
How does a petition help? Where are the freedom fighters?
Well, I think, one, you have to stay somewhat optimistic and realistic. To just get them to have to read the bill under penalty of perjury would slow down the legislative process a great deal. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, basically something that's classic and elegant is usually simple. You don't need a bunch of rhetoric to make a law, to pass a law. I mean, you don't need these tons and tons of paper and pages upon pages, as you suggested, were extremely convoluted and very difficult to understand and deliberately written that way because there's some special interest that penned this thing over, a 6-month time frame and was rushed through Congress in a 6-minute time frame and no one read it. So I think slowing down the Congress critters would be something that would be advantageous to everybody. There's enough laws on the books, really. That's not saying that there aren't any that shouldn't be passed. I think most new legislation should go into basically undo the mess that they've created, get things back to a very simple, understandable state. And that could happen. In fact, I'm fairly optimistic that it will happen, but it won't happen, in my view, until things have gotten to a point where they don't have a choice. In other words, the economic conditions require that things get very much simplified.
Does the natural ebb and flow of all this break down to action at the state level?
I think it is, and I think that's what we're seeing. If you look, again, at my specialty in the precious metals, what you're seeing is more and more states that are saying, we want to have gold and silver as a currency that can be used in the payment of debt at the state level, and that states' rights being enacted. I believe that's where it belongs. I believe that there's a trend there. I think it's going to accelerate, and I really think that will help solve the problem. I mean, basically, the federal government in the founding idea was that it was a very small area that had mandate over not over the states. The states were superior to the federal government, but they did have purview combining the states into a federation for purposes that were important, such as a military force or actually gathering the militia on a nation-state basis if it were required to do so. But they had very limited power. In fact, they had such limited power that the federal government was given a district, not a state. A state is superior to a district. And yet the District of Criminals, Columbia, was put together, and now, of course, the federal government, through various methodologies, have pretty much usurped the state's power, although the states are fighting back. But at law, the states are superior to the district.
So actually, if we can get back to a natural decentralization, we're going to be what our founding fathers meant us to be.
Pretty much. I mean, the idea was that a state, and this is a rough outline. I'm not a scholar when it comes to states' rights in the federal Constitution, but the idea was that states or the locality could pretty much decide how they wanted to do business. And so if a state, as an example, felt that prostitution should be legal, such as most of Nevada, people that were in favor of that could move to that state. And people that really didn't want anything to do with that type of thing would not be in Nevada. If you had a state that was favorable to gambling, for an example, and again, Nevada would come to mind, but let's just say, well, we can use that again. But I mean, whatever, let's say a certain, certain idea or certain methodology of doing something, it would attract certain people and not others. But it was the idea that the individual had the right to go where they wanted to. So the states had the power to provide for the citizenry of their state what they deemed appropriate. And, of course, it was really, in the true sense, voted on by the people. In other words, it was the people's will. And yet, of course, we've come a long, long ways from that over the last, many decades.
So we, the people, don't really get a chance to vote on our own personal destiny when we go to the ballot box. We're just selecting individuals, for the most part, that are being lobbied.
That's right. I mean, that's correct. It's sad but true. I mean, to think that, and that's what's pointed out again in this documentary, that a lot of freshman congressmen come in with a great deal of enthusiasm and very idealistic, only to learn the truth that there's 300 lobbyists following every one of them around, constantly bending their ear, and they learn if you're going to get anything done, you're going to have to listen to the lobbyists.
How can we find this documentary?
Well, I put it out for our, broad list, the basic free list that I maintain for everybody's benefit. There is a URL on there that you can click and buy the DVD. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're not on our list, just send an email to support@silver-investor.com. Again, that's support@silver-investor.com. And say you want the Fools on the Hill. That's Fools, F-O-O-L-S, on the Hill. It's all about how foolish the Congress critters are. And we'll send you the information on the DVD, how you can get it.
Before we sign off, tell us about the Morgan Report.
Well, I just mentioned we do have a free email for everybody's benefit. It does cost me time and money, but I'm happy to do it. And above that and beyond that, there's a member section, which is a paid service, which helps you make money in money, mining, and metals. There's a basic service for $130 a year, and there's two services above that. One is I show you the trades that I'm putting on and off and go into a lot of the videos. We produce videos of different companies, interviews, that type of thing, that we put in the members-only section. And then there's an advanced service for basically fund managers or high-net-worth individuals. It's called the Mastermind Series. And all of those are explained in greater depth on the website by a video presentation.
David, as always, it's been a bit of a history lesson and an economic lesson. Thanks for joining us today on the Ellis Martin Report.
My pleasure. Thank you.
David Morgan's website is arrived at by typing in silver-investor.com or themorganreport.com. I'm Ellis Martin.